Good morning. My name is Rick Lemieux, and I'm here to share with you today my thoughts on why project managers are the unsung heroes of cyber risk management. A little bit about myself. I am the co-founder of the DVMS Institute, and I serve as its chief product officer. I have 40 plus years of experience in delivering the outcomes that government regulators expect, and I have written over 70 articles on the topic of cyber risk management that you can find on the DVMS Institute website. A little bit about the Institute. The Institute's mission is to help organizations of any size, scale, or complexity create, protect, and deliver the digital value that it's known for. The Institute's vision is to teach organizations a holistic approach to protecting organizational digital value and resiliency through its culture, which I'll talk more about in the presentation today. So let's start off by having a conversation about what is digital value. And as it states here, the digital landscape has changed significantly over the past few decades, fundamentally altering how governments and businesses create and deliver value to their customers. A couple of examples would be e-commerce. It marked a significant milestone in the evolution of delivering digital business value. Amazon and eBay and other online retailers are great examples of how that changed our lives pretty much forever. Mobile computing expanded that landscape in by providing a way for businesses to create and capture value. So with the advent of the iPhone and the Android, marketers could reach us just about anywhere we are and basically personalize offerings, directly to our phones so that we might buy something on the spur of the moment. Artificial intelligence is quickly emerging as a very powerful force in the digital landscape, and it's set to dramatically raise the value bar across multiple industries. There's a ton of value associated with AI, but there's also a lot of concern right now because we really don't understand the new risk that AI presents to digital businesses. So, with that being said, let's shift the conversation to talk about digital risk. The digital age clearly has brought unprecedented advancements, transferring how we live, work, and interact with people. Once again, these advancements, while great and providing lots of conveniences, come with a lot of risk. And some examples of those risks are cultural risk. In my opinion, it's the organization's top risk because it shapes an organization's identity and influences every action within the organization, especially with customers. So culture is something that is a substantial risk that needs to be dealt with pretty much out of the gate. Cybersecurity is another very pressing digital risk. As our reliance on technology grows, so does the potential for cyber attacks, through those technologies. So it's important for organizations to, understand every aspect of their technological environment and ensure that that environment is, everything has been done possible to protect the value of the technology that underpins our digital services. The sheer interconnectedness of digital systems also is another risk that organizations face. Supply chains are an example of that. I mean, you think about how complex supply chain systems are and why it's important for organizations that connect to those supply chains to understand how they work and understand what the potential risks are to the business that is utilizing that supply chain or those supply chains. So that's another very important risk that the businesses face today. Data privacy, is something that is also very important. There's been some work done in that area, both in Europe and in the U.S., but in California Privacy Act, as well as the GDPR in Europe, and other regulatory environments as well have come up with new schemes to ensure data privacy is protected. I think for now it's kind of on the back burner because organizations are so focused around kind of stabilizing their environment, putting in place the ability to identify and mitigate risk. And then obviously look at data privacy as one of those risks. And I think we're going to see data privacy rise to the top of stack very soon because there's been lots of discussions in front of government about what's the best way to do that. So I think we're going to see some outcomes on that here shortly. Social engineering is another risk that exploits human behavior to gain unauthorized access to systems or information. This is your traditional phishing campaign and other types of social engineering type of attacks. So those are also risks that the businesses face today and need to deal with. So why do we need a new paradigm for protecting organizational digital value? Well, it's clear that traditional approaches to cyber risk management are no longer sufficient to address, the threats that we face today or that organizations face today. At the core of that new paradigm is recognizing that cyber risk management is not a cost center, but a strategic imperative for businesses. They really need to look at risk as, a business enabler. And the more you can manage that risk, the more value you deliver to your customers. And that's something we'll expand upon as we go further into this presentation. One of the key elements associated with the new paradigm is the focus on resilience. All right. We all know, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that we're all going to get attacked. In fact, we probably have, the bad guys living in our systems already. But what we need to be able to do is to recover from an attack that takes down a system or impacts the quality of a service quickly. And so as part of basically putting in place the capability to manage and protect our digital value, we're putting in place the capabilities to be able to identify much quicker and then to respond much quicker and restore the services so that the customer can continue to realize the value of the services that we deliver or that businesses deliver. To do this, organizations must first understand what the global regulations and their own internal digital quality goals are. A lot of organizations don't even have that. They just, basically put these systems together with no really thought put into, what are our quality goals? What are our performance goals? What are our uptime goals? And so they really need to go through that exercise and define what those goals are. Then clearly the regulations are basically bringing forward the things that you must have. And if you don't have them and you become breached, and you basically open the door to lawsuits and government inquiries and other things. So these are things that are just, kind of fundamental to cyber hygiene, if you will. And so the government has done a good job of defining what those things are. Organizations also need to utilize best practice frameworks, standards, and systems to deliver predictable outcomes. All right. If you don't have or you don't use any of these frameworks and standards and systems, your outcomes are probably going to be unpredictable. And then you've got a lot more questions to answer to higher authorities when that happens. And then they also need to really spend some time, working on their culture, really creating a culture capable of integrating digital value protection into employee daily work routines. So this isn't a matter of, this just being about IT or cybersecurity any longer. It involves all employees, and not only in their professional lives, but in their personal lives as well. So we need to instill a culture, capable of protection in their mindsets, in their daily workflows, so that, we can minimize the risk and improve the value or protect the value. So what is leadership's role in protecting digital value? Well, I think it says it clearly in the first bullet. Organizational leadership sets the cultural tone for the organization in regard to protecting its value. They are responsible for communicating these very complex security concepts to both technical and non technical audiences. So they need to create a common language that everyone can understand and connect with and become one with. And that's where, that's part of their responsibilities as the leadership team. They need to adapt strategies and systems to deal with the ever changing threat landscape. All right. The threat landscape is changing faster than we've ever seen any threat landscape change in history. So that means our ability to adapt to these changes also needs to be a lot quicker. So that's something that leadership needs to drive and ensure and continually innovate. And the last one is, in my opinion, is the most important one, and that is organizations need to invest in training and development. That teach all employees the fundamentals, the basics around what is digital business. We assume that everyone knows how digital systems work and how they're all interconnected in the value that they deliver, but they don't. A lot of people think it's magic and they enjoy magic, but they don't really understand how it all works. And I think at a foundational level, that's what they need to understand. They also need to understand why digital has so many risks associated with it and what those risks are. And then last but not least, they need to understand what their role as an individual, as an employee, in protecting, the digital value or the organization's digital value. And then how does that extend over into protecting my own personal value and personal situation, with my family and my kids and so on and so forth. And so it's really about being trained in understanding things at a fundamentals level so they can then make, informed decisions on what they want to do or what their role is in helping organizations protect their digital value. So now let's shift the gears here a little bit and let's talk about, why do organizations need to identify and classify all their digital risk? So a company's cybersecurity strategy depends on its culture, controls, and skills. Those are three basic fundamental things that organizations need to completely understand and then make decisions around how they're going to improve those areas. Conducting these comprehensive assessments allows them to identify their vulnerabilities and develop plans to mitigate those vulnerabilities, through controls and education and so on and so forth. Um, the key point here is that you cannot start anywhere but where you are at right now. And the only way you can determine where you're at is to do an assessment. All right. So these assessments must include assessing the culture. Because culture, as I mentioned before, reflects employee attitudes and behaviors towards protecting digital assets or cybersecurity in general. They kind of don't really know or don't care to know or don't want to know, but they do need to know. And so we need to understand, where the organization sits in terms of, you know, their attitudes and behaviors towards cybersecurity and towards digital value protection. We also need to assess the cybersecurity controls. These are the baseline controls that organizations need to have in place, to protect their technical infrastructure, their processes, their procedures, to safeguard digital assets. All right. So these are things like, ISO 27001. These are things like NIST 853 or NIST 800-171. So these are controls that have been defined by standards bodies as, baseline to cyber hygiene. So that's another assessment that organizations need to do to understand where they are from a controls point of view. And then last is employee knowledge, which I consider to be extremely important. All right, because it's really about, how what is our skills profile, what do our employees know, more importantly what don't they know, and how does that relate back to the organization's goal to protect its value. So you really need to do a skills inventory of everyone in your organization. What you might be surprised to find is that there are some employees in the organization in non-technical roles or non-IT roles who have incredible minds and are able to identify and mitigate, risk, very quickly, maybe quicker than others do. And so they might be good candidates to move from one department to another department because of their, the skills that you've been able to identify through this skills assessment. So I'm going to shift it one more time and talk about, why is it important to connect, digital systems, behaviors, and structures to your culture, right? Because what we're trying to do here is create a system, an overlay system that is capable of helping the organization manage this very complex digital environment and the risk associated with it, and be able to adapt that environment on a continual basis to the ever changing threat landscape, and as well as many other things that could impact an organization's ability to continue to provide the services and the value of those services. So let me kick this off with the opening paragraph and basically stating that, technology often takes center stage when we talk about cyber threats or cyber attacks, all right? But beneath the technological fabric, if you will, lies what is considered to be a less tangible but equally critical component, and that of organizational culture. All right, because culture is what, is how work gets done within organizations. It's how value gets established and maintained. People have been, training or understanding or trying to understand their cultures for years. And a lot of that's driven around, once again, what image are we presenting to the marketplace? How are we supporting our customers? How does that, drive the value that we want customers to experience so they keep coming back and buying more of what we're selling? Well, that now needs to extend into, the world of digital, and it goes beyond all of those things, but it all relates back to those things. And that is, we need to be able to identify and mitigate any risk that could impact that relationship or the value that we deliver to those customers. So with that being said, culture is, as I've stated a few times, is really the organizational DNA. It's shaping, its identity and influencing its actions. All right. And once again, if leadership is driving and curating that culture, it's something that's practiced from the top to the bottom of the organization. Culture also fosters a sense of shared responsibilities. This is not an individual sport. This is a team sport. We are all working together. We have a shared responsibility to help the organization, manage its risk and protect its value. So that's what culture does. Culture reinforces that whole shared responsibility principle. Cultural clearly influences employee behavior, both positively and negatively. If the culture is bad, you might have bad employee behavior that could impact them personally or could impact the organization as a whole. So it's important to understand, or at least have capabilities in place to leverage culture to encourage positive employee behavior. Culture is all about trust. And as it states here, trust is the cornerstone of any digital business today. And I don't know about you, but I'm having a real difficult time with trust lately online because there are just so many different attacks going on, which has even increased as a result of AI, that I don't know whether it's real or fake. So I just assume everything's fake. All right. Well, think about that from your customer point of view. Where they're doing business with you, they've built this trusted relationship with you, and you decide not, or the organization decides not to invest in protecting the value that they deliver, and something happens, and the customer clicks on something because he's trusting you as an organization, that ends up causing a disaster for his business or him personally. And so organizations really need to work hard on, not only developing that trust, but maintaining and continually innovating that trust with the customer. So the customer never ever doubts that when something comes from you, it's from you and it's designed to deliver the value that the customer expects. Mentioned this earlier, culture is all about leadership. This leadership shapes the organizational culture. So leadership, you notice another common theme throughout this presentation about leadership. Leadership is really, the key catalyst behind, shaping the culture, as well as driving the culture and curating the culture so that it never changes. And then through these assessment capabilities I mentioned earlier, you can always reassess to make sure that what you think is the culture is actually the culture. Culture is also about, a continuous effort to adapt and measure. You can't fix what you can't measure. So measurement's important. Okay. And once you have the data, then you can make, an informed, intelligent decision about adapting the business to, deal with changes in the threat landscape or changes in how the value is being delivered or what needs to be done to make the value better. All right. So it's all about that, continuing measurement and then adapting your environment to support what the measurement is telling you. Culture also determines organizational resilience to cyber threats. Excuse me. All of the features that we mentioned earlier, leadership, trust, employee behavior, shared responsibility. If all those things are in place, you have then basically put in place the capability to have a resilient organization. So the side effect of all of these different things is that organizational resilience capability, which is core and mission critical to all businesses today, especially in the digital environment. And last but not least, but very important, is that culture is a strategic investment designed to protect organizational representation, financial stability, and its competitive advantage in the marketplace. So once again, if leadership is thinking in the right direction and the investments are being made, then they don't have to worry about an attack that's going to destroy their reputation or empty the bank account or destroy their position in the market. That's why these things are strategic. They're core and mission critical to the success of digital businesses going forward. So that leads us back to today's topic, and that is, why are project managers the unsung heroes of cyber risk management? Personally, I'm a huge fan of project managers, program managers, because they get to have, they're like putting together a movie, they're like the directors, and the producers. They really get to, ensure that it happens and the outcome is delivered the way it was designed to be delivered. It doesn't say it comes easy. I mean, if you think about a director in a movie or a producer in a movie, especially the director, you're trying to capture scenes and you're trying to capture, a situation that, the viewer will connect with. And so there's a lot of work involved in that. And there's a lot of work involved in deploying new services or putting in place new risk management capabilities, to protect organizational value. So the project managers are really the directors of that world, and so they play a very important role in helping organizations achieve these goals. All right. So let me break these down into these different categories. So they clearly focus on delivering digital value outcomes. That's their part of their DNA. So they've already, they're tied into all the things I talked about earlier. That's part of what they do as part of their daily business operations. They are clearly the leaders of organizational change. All right. Now, needless to say, there are people who make the decision to change above the project and program managers. But who do they hand it to go get it done? The project and program managers, to make sure that things are delivered on time, on bid, on biz, on time, on budget, and in the outcome is achieved. Okay, and provable. All right, and so on and so forth. So project managers really play a key role in not only traditional digital services, but also in the context of adding new capabilities to the business to protect its value. They clearly possess the interpersonal skills necessary to drive change. All right. They're dealing with a lot of different people from a lot of different organizations. And if you don't have interpersonal skills, you'll never get anything done. All right. And so a lot of them have been in the business for a long time, and they've mastered the art of, building those relationships and getting things done the way they need to be done. They are really good at bridging the gap between technical and business stakeholders. That's always been a huge gap that, was a challenge for project and program managers, for companies who wanted to deliver new technologies that would make life easier for the business stakeholder. Well, the business stakeholder didn't always see it that way because they saw it as a change, and people don't like change. They liked the way they were doing it. They like to, write things down on paper versus going onto a computer. I know I'm aging myself here, but the point is that, the project manager has been able to, develop skills and capabilities to bridge that gap between the technical and the business stakeholders. They're really good at translating complex cyber concepts into understandable terms. Once again, it goes back to the previous bullet, and bridging that gap. They're really good at identifying, potential risk before they become a costly remediation effort. All right. Once again, their job is to ensure that the outcome is delivered. But if they see risk embedded in there that could impact that outcome, they need to identify that right away to resolve it before it costs the business a lot of money. They, in most cases, especially in these day and age of, increased regulatory rules, especially in the areas of risk management, they have to examine project plans for, to ensure that they are aligned with the regulatory requirements. So they work, with the auditing department, the risk department, and so on, to understand, what needs to be included in the project in order to ensure that those goals are met on top of the value that the service was designed to deliver to customers. So that's another key value that, makes a project manager an unsung hero. And I guess, this is kind of a repeat of a previous bullet, but, they form alliances to ensure project success. So, it's kind of like, before the football team goes out on the field on Sunday, they practice the whole week. They review the plans for the game prior to the game, and they go out and execute on the plan. And that's what the project manager, they're really the head coach, if you will, in making sure that, everyone on the team understands what their role is, and to ensure that these alliances are formed, to ensure overall project success. That's the end of my presentation. You can reach me at support@dvmsinstitute.com. And just so you know, we will be releasing a white paper and a publication on the topic discussed today that will be available in January. So I'll be more than happy to send you a free copy of the white paper and point you to where you can purchase the publication. Thank you very much, and you have a great day.